All right, so on our last page, page 5, so find all solutions, hence follow the steps below. So it's going to look just like this on the exam. I'll give you these directions basically on how to approach these. So we want to start by listing all the possible solutions. So on this first one, you want to do your all your factors of p divide by all your factors of q. And so here's your p, here's your q value. So on top, you're only going to have plus or minus 1. On bottom, you're going to have plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, and plus or minus 6. So you're going to have to take that 1 and divide it by all 4 of those. So your possible solution set is plus or minus 1, plus or minus 1/2, plus or minus 1/3, and plus or minus 1/6. Obviously, I mean, you could start with the fractions if you wanted to, but I would probably start with 1 and -1, and hopefully one of those works. All right, so let's see. We're going to make a little half of a rectangle here. So we're going to have 6, then a 1 for that coefficient right there, then -4, and then 1. And so we'll start with 1. We'll try the number 1. So let's see, we drop our 6. 6 times 1 is 6. That adds to 7. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 and -4 is 3. 3 and 1 is 3. That adds up to 4. That was not a good one. That one does not work. Hopefully, hopefully -1 will work for us. So here we go again. 6, 1, -4, 1. And so we'll go ahead and try -1 this time. So we drop the 6. 6 times -1 is -6. This adds up right here to -5. -5 times -1 is +5. +5, -4 add up to 1. 1 times -1 is -1. Adds up to 0. So bingo, we found one of our answers. So we don't want to forget that. That's actually one of our answers right there. Now we're going to take the dividend. We're going to take what was left behind after we divided and turn that back into a polynomial. So that would be 6x squared minus 5x plus 1. And so basically what you did was you factored that, the original polynomial into that times x plus 1. But anyways, I'm just going to leave it like this. We're trying to figure out what makes this equal 0. That's the whole question, basically, is what makes that polynomial equal 0. So now we're at a point where we can factor. And if you really want to, you could do the quadratic formula, but this should be factorable. So let's see, let's look at this. So like I said, you can use whatever technique you like, but it's probably going to break up into 3x and 2x. And then the way I get +1 is either 1, 1 or -1, -1. It's going to be -1 and then -1. And if you FOIL this back together, you'll see that these two things, these two things are the exact same. So the exact, if you were to FOIL it, you would see that it's the same thing you have in red. Okay, so we're just manipulating it. So you take each one of these and set them equal to 0 and solve. Okay, I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to do it in my head, okay? So my final answer, well, we had -1 over there from when we did our synthetic division. Then from here, if I add 1 and divide by 3, that'd be 1/3. So 1/3 is another one of my solutions. And then here, if I add 1 and divide by 2, that would be 1/2. That's another one of my solutions. So what happened in this case was all my answers ended up being rational. And what that means is my answers were fairly decent. They were either whole numbers or fractions, okay? That won't always be the case. Sometimes our answers are going to have radicals in it, and in those cases, we'll have to do the quadratic formula. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. I think we might have to do that here on the next one. All right. So we'll go ahead and start by listing our P's and Q's, right? So figuring that part out. So on top, once again, it'll be plus or minus 1. On bottom, it'll be plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2. So really, we're kind of limited in our possibilities, which is a good thing. So plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 1/2. So I really only have 4 possibilities on this one, okay? So once again, I'll probably start with 1 and just work my way down. And so it looks like this first 1 is not going to work. 1 does not work. So we'll go ahead and try -1. It looks like -1 is not going to work either. Okay, so now I'm going to have to try the fractions, which honestly, that's not that bad. It's not like we're going to have to deal with any other fractions besides the multiplier. So let's see, 2, 9, -7, 1. So let's go ahead and try 1/2. So half of 2 is 1, adds up to 10. Half of 10 is 5, adds up to -2. Half of -2 is -1, adds up to 0. Bingo. Okay. So like I said, not that bad. So our dividend here is going to be 2x squared plus 10x minus 2. We want to figure out what makes that equal 0. And so you could try to factor it, but you're not going to have much luck. So we are going to have to do the quadratic formula. Now, before I do the quadratic formula, I can make my life a little bit easier by going ahead and just dividing both sides by 2. So that'll reduce this down to x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 0. Just makes life a little bit easier. So there's my A, my B, and my C. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go up here and do my quadratic formula. So x equals -5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times -1 all over 2 times 1. All right, so I just need to solve this and then I'm done. So let's see, x equals -5 plus or minus the square root of 25. This will turn into a +4 here, all over 2. And so then I end up with x equals -5 plus or minus the square root of 29, all over 2. And I can't simplify the square root of 29, so we're good. So my final answer, we don't want to forget about the 1/2 over here that worked. So that's one of my answers, 1/2. And then my other 2 answers is right here, -5 plus or minus the square root of 29 all over 2. And so there are my answers. Make a little note that that's where I kind of went the flow of all this stuff. All right. So one more to go. Here we go. Okay, so you'll notice that this one is raised to the power of 4. So that means we're probably going to have to do the synthetic division more than once, okay? We had one like this in the notes, so we've seen something like this before. So we'll start by listing our possible zeros. So we're going to do our P over Q. So let's see, we should have plus or minus 1, 2, 3, 6 all over plus or minus 1. So that makes life kind of easy. So it's just basically a repeat of the numerator. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Once again, I mean, you could jump around if you want, but to kind of keep things organized and make, kind of keep track of what numbers you've used, I'm just going to start with 1, -1, 2, -2, and so on. Let's see, 1, -1, -7, 1, 6. So I just got these numbers from up here. All right, so we'll start with 1. And it looks like we hit a bingo. Looks like we got a remainder of 0, so very good. So basically what I'm left with here, just to kind of make a point of this, you could actually just keep doing your synthetic division if you wanted. But basically what's going on is this, this turns in, right, let's see, here we go. This turns into x to the third, third. This is plus basically 0x squared, then minus 7x, and then minus 6. And so we're trying to figure out what makes this equal 0. And at this point, we don't actually have, we can't factor it. So what we're going to have to do is keep doing our synthetic division. So we're just going to keep doing that. So here we go. Let's see, I've got 1, 0, -7, and -6. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and try -1. So let's see if that works. So we drop the 1. 1 times -1 is -1. This adds up to -1. -1 times -1 is +1. This adds up to -6. -6 times -1, that gives me a +6. That adds up to 0. Yay! So the first two I tried worked. That's great. Okay. So let's look at the dividend. The dividend would be x squared minus x minus 6. And we want to figure out what makes that equal 0. Luckily, I believe this is factorable, so we don't have to do the quadratic formula. So we're trying to figure out basically what multiplies to give us -6 and add up to -1 right there. So that shouldn't be too difficult. All right. So let's see, I believe it's going to be a -3 and a +2. And if you were to FOIL this, it's the same thing as you have up here in blue. But what that does is that helps us figure out these solutions. So these solutions should be 3 and -2. And then we don't want to forget about 1 and -1 because those were part of our solutions that made the polynomial equal 0 also. We also want to include 1 and we want to include -1. And so there are our 4 solutions.